Hello, welcome to Universities UK Skills webcast. My name is Greg Wade. I'm joined by Stephen Isherwood, who is the Chief Executive of the Association of Graduate Recruiters. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
No trouble at all, Greg.
Was just reflecting, we first met at least 10 years ago working on the Burgess work, on the development of the Higher Education Achievement Report.
It was, yes. I think the FT had asked for a comment from myself, to which I'd said that yes, employers were dissatisfied with the degree classification system. But until something else came up, we were just going to live with it. And I think that was seen as this could be somebody quite useful to get involved in this project. So yes.
I think we nabbed you as a result of that.
I think it was
article.
definitely as a result of that.
Yeah. And your role then was head of graduate recruitment at Ernst & Young.
That's right, yes. So accountancy for professional services, hiring at the time, a good 700 or 800 graduates a year. Quite a lot, yes.
Yes, and now you've moved to the Association of Graduate Recruiters. Can you tell us more about the work that it does in your role?
Sure. So we are predominantly the employer voice on the graduate market. And in fact, we talk ourselves out as a student market association now, because so many employers are also looking at the school leaver programme, degree partnerships. It's a much broader approach employers take to talent. So we're quite a broad church. So we have over 300 employers who are members, nearly 100 universities, 100 suppliers to the industry. But it's that employer end of the market is that we do research on. It's what we comment on. We do networking on. We do policy initiatives on. It's that transition from the world of being a student into the world of work.
Yes, and I mean, you've worked with UK. We've worked together on quite a few occasions in terms of how universities as providers, if you like, and employers as recruiters can work together to enhance that relationship.
Absolutely. Because I think when you look over the last 10 to 12 years, the market has changed significantly. It's not only the growth in student numbers, but the growth in graduate positions. There are a considerable number of employers now who hire over 1,000 graduates a year. So the numbers are quite significant now, and the investment employers make into higher education is pretty significant.
On that theme, from your perspective, can you tell us what you think employers value in graduates, if it's possible to sort of pinpoint a few things in a very complex and big market, as you say?
Yes, and one of the difficulties is that we generalise about the graduate market as if it's a kind of an amorphous blob, whereas actually what you have are a set of very distinct labour markets. So the labour market for investment banking is very different to engineering, which is different to the public sector. But having said that, you can generalise to a certain extent. And the reason that employers are interested in hiring graduates is they value the intellectual ability that graduates have. That firepower that they bring to their organisations. They value the different perspectives that graduates can bring to an organisation. They value actually that ability to think through problems, solve issues. And they also see graduates as very much future talent. A lot of the employers we work with really see graduates as their long-term talent pipelines. It's a bit of a myth that all graduates leave, that they all change jobs every 6 months.
Yes.
Actually, when you look at our data, the bulk of graduates stay at least 4.5, 5 years with their first organisation.
Yeah.
So it's yes, there is issues of retention, but actually that's why employers invest their considerable talent pools into their businesses.
Yeah. So employers are investing in the potential of graduates as well as the skills that graduates have.
Yeah. And it's different for different industries. If you take, for example, the accountancy world, which is my background really, you cannot become an accountant unless you qualify.
Right.
So those businesses have to have that talent pipeline feeding through, to their future generations. That's simply the way that the profession works. Other industries are a bit different. There's some very big global brand names that actually may not have very big actual graduate programs because they're looking at them as future talent pipelines.
Yeah.
But they'll also have lots of other entry routes for graduates who join at other different levels in the organisations.
Yeah.
So there's a whole range of reason employers recruit graduates, and a whole different bunch of different ways in which they actually do it as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for explaining that. That we've talked about the positives. Where do you see the challenges or perhaps the skills gaps that seem to come up regularly or are a current issue?
It's funny the skills piece, because it's it's almost becoming a cliche, isn't it, where everybody's the skills gap, the skills gap.
Yes.
But it is a reality. When we look at our data, so every year we ask active employment, how many of you didn't fill all your vacancies? And even in 2009, which was the height of the last recession, we still had nearly 20% of our employers who didn't fill all their vacancies. Predominantly IT sector, engineering sector, after those STEM skills. And the numbers may not have been huge, but there were still positions there that went unfilled. And it's one of the unique features of the UK market is that many employers don't really care what somebody studies. So about 75% according to our data, which means if you don't really mind what somebody studies, actually that makes it quite a bit harder to find your talent pools and where do you go hunting to find the right people. Which of course, if you actually, so let's take the legal sector. If you're in Germany, you can't become a lawyer unless you've done a law degree. A law firm would never recruit anybody who hadn't done a law degree. They just think we're a bit weird when it comes to things like that. Whereas in the UK, of course, actually you talk to any law firm and probably half their intake don't have a law degree, don't do a conversion course. So that provides great opportunities for young people, but it also leads to a lot of ambiguity. And also I think that feeds through into the area of skills, because it makes the connection between what you study and then how you transition into work a bit weaker, which means I think that there's a bit of a break in the loop there.
Okay, that's helpful to know. So how can universities and employers work together to address these challenges?
I think there's a whole range of ways that employers can work together, and many of those things are actually happening now. Again, I use my background in professional services because that's the field I worked in for 12, 14 years. You look at what's happened over the last decade. You have degree partnerships that you didn't used to have. You have organisations going to 30, 40, 50 institutions doing a whole range of activities, from the pure branding, marketing stuff they do, presentations, to actually going in, working with academics, sponsoring employability awards, a whole range of activities. So there's quite a lot happening already, but I think because of that issue around ambiguity, I think a lot more can be done in terms of getting students to actually get better experiences around the world of work, whether that's sandwich degrees, placement degrees, summer internships. It's giving people that experience of work to help them understand actually what that transition is. Because again, if you look particularly to the continent, somebody is much more likely to have done some work experience as part of their degree, and many more students actually have that job earmarked lined up before they graduate.
Okay. Is that because more employers are engaged with the universities when compared to the UK, or do you know if they're doing particularly different things?
It's the way the market works differently. So if you look at the whole careers infrastructure around UK universities, that's very different to mainland Europe. Again, because so much of what you do, if you study a specific degree, you know which career that's going to lead into. And a lot of that is determined much earlier in the pipeline. So you're a 13, 14, 15-year-old, that's when you're making those decisions. And there's a negative side to that, because I was chatting to somebody who worked at a French university. She has to deal with students who got to the age of 21. They're thinking about graduating and they've realised this path they've chosen is the wrong path for them. And it's very difficult to break out of that. So there's pros and cons on both sides. But I think when you look, again, particularly at Europe, but also to the States and other areas, that mechanism between work, the German practicum is much more common in terms of a work experience initiative than something similar in the UK. So it just makes the bonds greater, it creates a loop, which I think actually benefits the academic community, because it makes those ties closer. I was chatting to somebody at a university that's very strong on work placements, and the academic was saying how much better students he has, the ones who come back after year 8, because they just realise life's a bit messy. Things go wrong and they kind of deal. They may not be happy, they may grizzle a bit, but they deal with it. Whereas actually somebody who hasn't that experience actually is a bit less resilient. And resilience is one of those things employers very much are looking for when they hire graduates. The world gets more complex, faster changing, etc.
And it enhances their potential to cope with that, which goes back to our early point about graduate potential.
Absolutely.
Do you think there are any particular challenges if we wanted to have greater work experience for students and greater range of options in relation to the ways that can happen between universities and employers. What do you see as the main obstacles?
I think there's two obstacles. One actually is the number of placements offered by employers. Some employers offer, a huge amount of vacancies. Some employers offer more internship opportunities and they have graduate roles. Some it's the other way around. So that's part of it, is making sure there are enough opportunities for students and employers invest in those. There's also the other issue, which is around student demand for internships. I was chatting to somebody at a particular university who'd done a lot of work in terms of encouraging that employer demand, but then found the students were reluctant to take up that positions.
Right.
Issues of extra fees, not graduating at the same time as their cohorts. I think for some students the idea of 6 months or a year out, it feels like a very long time, whereas when you've got a few more grey hairs, you realise actually a year in your career life cycle, it's not quite such a long time frame. Exactly, such a large slice. So it's issues so it's a cultural issue. It's how to improve that culture. Looking at universities like Aston, like Surrey, for example, that have a very strong culture. It's not an issue because the students expect it. That's why they go there. It's universities where it's not so embedded in the culture of the institution. I think that's where we can do more work.
Okay, thank you for that. We've talked about sort of skills with matches and skills challenges and positives about skills. Are there broader challenges that you think are important or you're engaged in considering or addressing?
One of the interesting things that's happened, and I alluded to this when we first started talking, is that if you look at my old job at EY, I was head of graduate recruitment. That job title now is head of student recruitment.
Okay.
You're seeing many more organisations talk about early talent team, emerging talent, and when you get behind sort of the HR buzzwords, it's employers actually taking a broader view of their early talent intakes. So yes, it's graduates, and I think the bulk of the action will remain in graduates. The apprentice levy is causing a market shift, but that market shift was happening already anyway. Employers thinking actually, is there a talent pool in schools, people who don't want to go to university? Actually, should we be fishing around there? And the apprentice levy is fueling that market. I think the reason that's a challenge in our world, which is sometimes I think some of the issues we're dealing with around employability, the skills people are creating, it's much harder at the stage we're dealing with that when somebody's 18, 19, 20, 21, transitioning into that world of work. Actually, if we were much better with our education system at getting that world of work into 13, 14-year-olds, so they're making better, more informed decisions, I think a lot of the issues we're trying to deal with at our end will be dealt with earlier on. When I look at international systems, again, they have issues of rigidity, so I'm not saying there's a perfect model in other countries, but it does strike me that actually the decisions people are making a bit earlier in their lives are a bit more informed.
Thank you for that really fascinating and helpful insight into what is quite a varied and complex and ever-changing recruitment market. A lot of these issues you've raised, the UK is looking at addressing further in its review of skills, which we've talked about. Do you think your members will be interested in responding?
Definitely. I think there's been a significant change over the last few years in how employers are recruiting and looking at the skills base. So when we've done research in the past, we get pretty significant but also a relatively generic list of skills that employers are looking for. And as employers have got more sophisticated, as they're going into like I say, a broader range of talent pools, we're seeing employers use different techniques around how they recruit people. So without getting bogged down in recruitment methodologies, but things like looking at strengths, what do people love to do rather than what they just can do. It was in the FT only last week, a couple of American investment banks looking at using behavioural mapping techniques that dating websites use, so there is a bit of a shift in terms of employers getting more sophisticated. And we talked a bit about things like resilience. Can you measure it? How do you measure it? So
or assess it.
Or assess it even. And there's different schools of thought of that. So I think the time is right actually to review what are employers looking for, what are those core skills they're after, and where are they finding actually the best ways to generate those skills in young people. So yes, absolutely, I think the time is right to do something like that.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to getting as good insights from your members as you've given us, and to collaborating on the outcomes and the future challenges. So thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Greg.